Welcome back. Thank you for joining us at the Healthy Minds podcast. Our goal for this podcast is to bring awareness to mental health, reduce stigma around the world, and share stories that recovery is possible for everyone. Today we have our special guest, Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for coming out and being a part of this experience and being willing to share your recovery with the world.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to.
Of course, Michelle. So Recovery Empowerment Network hosts this podcast where we help people in the mental health community to learn new skills that they can better utilize in the community and out in the world to help other people. Michelle, I know you have some big topics you want to talk about, and so why don't we jump into just learning a bit about you? So can you tell me a little bit about your recovery story?
Well, it starts pretty much from as early as I can remember. My mom was very verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive. Following that, I had a lot of abusive relationships, and my last abusive relationship was probably 3 years ago. And it wasn't until I went to a day program like this that I learned that I was okay and that I was worth getting out of bad relationships.
So can you tell us a little bit about, when do you feel your journey in mental health began? Like your recovery journey really began for you?
Really, I would say going to the day program that I went to before. I went to my clinic because they had sent me there, and I actually, from a counselor, I was recommended to take the SMI test to see if I had qualified. And quite a few people were telling me, don't take that test. Your car's going to get taken away and you're going to be really dependent on people and they're not going to let you be independent. And so I was a little nervous about it. But I said, what the heck? I want to see what they say. And so I took the test and they determined that I was, seriously mentally ill. From that point on, they sent me to a clinic and I was hooked up with a psychiatrist and a case manager. And I went through several because they tend to go pretty quickly. They tend to switch out.
So exactly how many years ago was this then that you took this test?
I'm not sure the exact year, but I've only been in Arizona 15 years.
Okay.
And I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, so about 6 or 7 years you've been on this journey.
Yeah.
What was your reaction or feelings towards, taking the test and then being diagnosed as SMI? Was it relief? Was it I understand some things now? Was it wow, I feel like I now have this label put on me? What were your feelings?
A lot of people say, oh, I hated getting diagnosed and everything. For me, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I had so many services open up for me that weren't there before. I had an understanding of why I was the way I was, and it just gave me validation. So I felt good about it. I was positive about it. I just don't like the fact that we are labeled seriously mentally ill.
And why would you say that?
Because that has such a negative connotation. I actually was told by a friend of mine at a talent show, I actually talked about SMI and what I would rather call it. And I came up with so magnificent, it's whatever you want it to be. And then a friend came up to me and said that she and her mom came up with something else. And I kind of adopted it. They said simply magical individual.
Yeah, for myself, I try not to say mental illness. I do my best to say mental health. The illness part can be a difficult word sometimes to stomach, because it does have the idea of a sickness with it, where it's health is something that we all encompass. Not that we all don't also experience illness, because we all do experience illness in some way, from the common cold to terminally ills. I understand, though, the feeling of that negative connotation to it.
Mental illness is okay with me, but the seriously actually bothers me. That means or it implies that you're different from someone else. Like most people have mental illness, they have mental health issues. They can control it more easily. And for us with the serious label, it just means that we need some medication to help control it and some intensive therapy and skill building to help it.
I love that. So you took the test, and for you it was a positive thing.
Yes, very.
What happened after that? So then you started going to another facility, a day program, and good experience?
Oh, yes, very. I grew so much by being there and by talking about skill building, and it was just very helpful for me to see that I was not crazy, I was not the only one, and that there were other people, not who had the very same experience, but similar. For lack of a better word, I felt normal.
I don't think that's a bad way to put it. I mean, I understand the idea of wanting to feel normal. I mean, when we say normal, it's like
right.
What is normal, because everyone has their own ideas of normal. But at the same time, it's like to feel like you're a part of a larger circle as opposed to completely isolated and alone.
Right.
Is comforting.
Yes.
And helpful. So you were there at that facility, and then what brought you here to Ren?
Actually, my wellness and life coach, which was there over at that facility,
Yeah.
she came to work over here, and she told me about it, and I was very nervous leaving the last place that I was in, but I didn't really feel comfortable at the time where she wasn't, and so I took a big leap of faith, and I followed her over.
And do you feel it was a good choice?
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
So that's a bit of your story. Can you tell us something about a major challenge that you faced in your recovery?
Well, because of the abuse I had growing up, I had a lot of ideas about who I was, a lot of false ideas about who I was. Past that, I was bullied during school a lot because I didn't try and stick up for myself. I took everything in, and I punished myself. I blamed myself, and I shamed myself for a lot of things, and, it just continued. My mom passed away when I was 20. Thankfully, I was able to be her caregiver for a couple of years before she passed away, and I really got to know her as, I hate to say this like this, but I got to know her as a person instead of a monster.
And so was the monster you thought of her for a large portion of your
Yeah.
childhood?
For a long time, I was afraid of her. And I guess I still was until she died. But she even asked me one time, she asked me if I was afraid of her, and I said, "Do you want me to be honest?" She said, "Yes," and I said, "Yes, I am."
And what was that like?
It was hard, and a lot of times I didn't know how she was going to react to something. I mean, I was on eggshells all of my life with her.
How did she react to it?
She didn't really react at all. I mean, she reacted to a whole lot of other stuff.
Well, I see you said that PTSD is a big part of your recovery journey, and I assume that the PTSD relates to this individual.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of the results of this relationship? Like, what did this lead to in terms of for yourself?
Bad self-esteem for one thing. My punishment for certain things. Sometimes not even things I did, but just kind of because she felt like it. They were serious and they were irrational. I was thrown up against a wall, beaten severely emotionally and verbally. I was put down every day.
You told me a little bit about your anxiety, panic attacks, and then you had a suicide attempt. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, my first suicide attempt was at 13. And it wasn't really being talked about, but it was kind of glossed over. There was really a couple of things that people would say. The other one was that, I'm 48 now, and that was 13, so 35 years ago.
So, you were talking about your first suicide attempt. Thank goodness it wasn't successful.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit about what was the result of that circumstance? Like thinking to like the next day to like a month in, a year after, like what was going through Michelle?
A lot was going on. I don't feel like I just wanted out. I was never taught a healthy way of dealing with things. And I thought that was my only choice. I thought it was my only way. But as far as I can remember, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to run away from home. 4 and 5 years old, I just wanted to be away.
You told me a bit about the punishments that you received.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about those effects? Like what effects did those have on you, Michelle?
Some plague me to this day. I have a lot of PTSD. I feel a lot of shame. I blame myself for everything. And I believe that, in my sick way of thinking, I believe that everybody gets mad at me and I'm at fault all the time. And the only way I can fix something, or I think it's so I feel some control over something that's out of my control. I blame myself, and the only thing that I can do to fix something is to take the responsibility on myself. Because, I was told a lot that something that was wrong with them was my fault. So to this day, it's hard to let things go. Like if people are mean, I realize now that it's the problem with them. But I still feel a lot like it's a problem with me. And I take things incredibly personally still.
Do you feel like you are happier now?
I do. In large part to the day programs I've been in, yeah. Because they've taught me a lot about myself. And I was kind of going from hospital to hospital to hospital, psych hospitals, until I started going to places like this. Because here is when I finally found out what was going on with me. And, with other counseling and everything, I did learn from each one, and I gained more insight over the years. It hasn't been till recently that I've discovered, that I'm a pretty cool person, and, I need to stick with that. And, being in my last abusive relationship, I just kept letting things hit me, and I took everything on. I took on the feelings of other people. I took on their hurts. I took on everything they ever said about me as gospel fact,
It sounds like you carried a lot of other people's opinions.
Yes, very. Everybody's opinion was what I based my opinion of myself on. So anything that anybody said that was bad, and since I grew up with that was a lot easier for me to take than anything that anybody said that was nice. Anything that anybody said that was nice, I would cry because I somewhat believed it because it was coming from them. Mm-hmm. But when I went home, I would get this barrage of other comments and things like that. And so it hurt to hear the truth because it wasn't what I was hearing. It wasn't what I thought was the truth. I thought people were just trying to be nice to me. And I didn't know that what they were saying was actually the truth.
How has that, if it at all has, changed over time? Like, do you still feel that you carry these opinions of other people or those past opinions?
I do carry other people's opinions. I still take things personally and do all that, but I have ways of rethinking things, and I have a lot better skills at reframing, at questioning what is truth and what's not.
Would you be able to tell us some of those skills that you have, like in terms of reframing or things like that? I'm sure that there's probably some listeners out there who maybe could benefit from those skills.
One most recently is that not just assuming that it's about me, because people have a lot of stuff of their own that they're dealing with. And, any situation is possible. And so instead of taking things personally, I try and think of the other person. I try and think of what they might be going through. I try and think of, different scenarios, and I try and focus on me and what I'm doing. And distraction is a real good one, until I can bear to deal with things on my own. And sometimes you just need to take a break. But yeah, not always assuming the worst. Yeah, just thinking of different things other than what I initially start to think.
Yeah. You've talked to me about anxiety.
Yes.
And panic attacks. Can you tell me a little bit about your first panic attack?
Growing up, I was afraid of a lot. I just generally had fear. But the first one that really freaked me out, I was 12 years old, and I was spending the night at someone's house. And I was getting ready for bed, and I was in the bathroom. And, when I tell this story, people are like, oh, you didn't recognize yourself, or there's like a spiritual thing or something, I didn't recognize myself. No, it was I actually looked in the mirror and I saw someone else. It was very terrifying. Because when you look up into the mirror, you expect to see yourself. And when you see someone else staring back at you, you freak out a little bit. So that was my very first panic attack. And I think at that point I remember thinking, okay, you're at someone's house. You can't exactly have a panic attack right now. So you got to start acting now like everything's perfectly normal. But I was an expert at that.
Can you tell me just, we don't have to go too in detail, but the person you saw, was it like just a normal looking person, just not you? Or was it like some kind of like I don't know, like demon or something like that? Like it was something supernatural?
It was a regular person, but it was actually, I remember thinking it was weird because I saw a guy.
But it wasn't like a ghost or something was staring back
like
at you.
that.
Okay, gotcha. That's kind of what I was.
It was a human being.
Yeah.
In fact, I was never diagnosed with this, but looking back and reading up on things and different symptoms, different things that I would do to deal with the fear and the depression that came along, I have no doubt in my mind that I had some sort of dissociative disorder.
At Ren, we're a peer run agency. So for any of our listeners who don't know, what that means is that, speaking of your medical history and what it was that you experienced in your childhood and how it seems to have formed into your adulthood, what are some things that you found that have given you hope?
I've kind of been on a more spiritual side, partly because I was raised, with a strong spiritual background, going to church every week, all that. So I think just basically experiencing little things here and there and being taught what to watch for. And, I forgot for a little while, but just learning that what it meant to have God as my father, and then what it meant for me to be a daughter of God.
So you're still active in your spirituality, your faith?
Yes, very.
And how was it that what you went through as a child, how did that, I assumed it strengthened your relationship and your faith.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I just knew that God had a different opinion of me. I don't know how I had it, but I knew that ultimately that I was his child no matter what. And I didn't understand why all these things were happening, why he would allow things like that to happen. But I realized that had I not gone through what I went with my mom and other people, and had I not experienced, had these things not happened, I wouldn't know what recovery was. And I wouldn't be able to share a story like this with other people if it hadn't happened. And I grew because of it. And that's what I'm passionate about today is being able to share my story and being able to say that, yes, I had a lot of crappy things happen. And I came back. I reframed. I changed my thinking and I learned who I really was.
What would you say to somebody who has possibly experienced similar things as you, but is seeing things from the opposite side of the fence, if you will, right?
Right. You know, I borrowed on a lot of other people's faith when I didn't so much have it on my own, because there are people that love you and have faith in you and are seeing it from the other side that you can borrow theirs.
What does that look like?
Now, I remember when there still was no hope, that I had none. And I remember people saying, just rely on me. And not only would I see myself kind of laying back in their arms, but I just look at the health problems that I've been through. And I looked at so many surgeries and so many dialysis treatments, so many infections that I've had where I should not, for any reason other than God, be alive today. But I am being kept alive because of him. And I know for a fact that I couldn't handle anything by myself. I've been through so many things that I had a choice. I could be bitter or I could turn to God. And I chose to turn to God. I mean, not to say I wasn't bitter, but I'm like, well, if this is something you need to teach me, then do it now. I kind of surrendered and said, okay, obviously something that you want me to learn from these experiences, then I'm going to submit myself and I'm going to be humble and teachable so that I can learn this and not have to be stubborn at it and go through it several times.
Right, kind of learn from the mistakes, right? It sounds like your faith is something that's incredibly important in your recovery.
Yes.
How important would you say faith is in recovery in general? Like, do you think that everybody should find faith, or do you think that that's something that's not necessarily built for everybody, or maybe people need to find on their own esteem, their own path?
This is what I've learned, that God meets you wherever you're at. And so whoever their higher power is, then you do that. And it's everybody's choice. It's everybody's time period. I just know what helped me. And I think he meets everyone where they're at. People tend to say he turns away from you and stuff like that, because you're doing bad and all that. And I'm like, no, I believe that we turn from him because we're ashamed or whatever. And I believe that when we turn back, that he's right there. And he's never been mad, that he's loved us this whole time. He loves us because we're children of his.
Michelle, it sounds like from your story that I've heard, that you've obviously experienced a lot of relationships that didn't seem like they were full of love.
Right.
Do you feel you have found relationships in your life that have given you love?
I know my family loves me. People at church, different friends that I've met. I didn't know that growing up. It's kind of nice. I mean, looking back, and realizing how they did love me, I just didn't understand it. and how, how they showed love. And I honestly believe that they felt about me what my mom portrayed me to be.
How so?
They all thought I was slow and not mature, not where I should have been. And I think, I don't know, through that, I think they kind of took a cue and thought, well, we'll just, she's special. We got to take care of her. And I didn't feel like I had a voice. I didn't feel like I was intelligent. I didn't feel like I was capable of anything.
You and I have talked about this idea of an abusive relationship versus true love. Can you go a little bit into that? What are your thoughts on this idea of abusive relationships versus true love?
Abusive relationships is people taking advantage of you. Then there can be more than one type of abuse. It can manifest itself in different ways, such as verbal, just being critical and yelling. Yelling doesn't need to happen. Neither do guilt trips. Neither does anybody saying that you're less than. I had a lot of abusive relationships that I was afraid to get out of. You never want to feel intimidated by somebody else, whether it's physical or verbal or mental, emotional, anything. Sexually too.
So obviously there's a lot on the abusive side. What's on the true love side?
Actually, I wrote something about that. Do you mind?
Oh, no, go for it.
I save a lot of my writings. I go to, I've been through a lot of creative writing classes, and I was actually winning poetry contests when I was like 11 and 12. And I actually, strangely enough, had my mom to thank for that. She started me creative writing like in second grade.
Okay.
And she was very good at stuff like that. So this is what I wrote. It's entitled True Love. True love is not about your partner slaying your dragons. It's about your partner helping you slay your dragon by giving you encouragement and guidance. True love is sharing your last cookie with someone. True love is loving someone the way they need to be loved and not just what you're used to. True love is not about brutal honesty. It's about open communication and being open to the other's point of view, or at least being willing to listen. True love is not about climbing up the tower to save the princess. It's about providing a way for the princess to climb down. True love is holding your partner for the rest of yours and their lives.
Very nice. And you wrote that?
Yeah.
So in writing that, was that written because you felt like you had found it, true love? Or did you write it because you were longing it?
Right now I'm in a relationship that's lasted close to 6 months now. It's the first healthy relationship I've ever been in. And I truly feel like I've found that. I've found the true love that I was looking for, even though sometimes I didn't know I was looking for it. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of different ideas about love, what love should be like and what I wanted it to be like. And now I feel like I found what it is. So fortunate and so happy.
Can you tell us a little bit about how did it start? How did you meet this person?
I met him here. I actually thought he was cute and I thought he was nice. And about that same time, someone came along who I started to be friends with. And I was a little heartbroken because she was very forward and I didn't know how to be. I didn't want to be. And she ended up getting together with him. And that relationship lasted about 6 months. During that time, she became very toxic. And she was another person that I had to get away from. But because we had gotten to know each other, me and him, through our friendship, mutual friendship, I developed feelings for him. And I don't know when his feelings started, really. Mm. He was just, I loved this person, and I was saddened to see how my friend was treating him. And I wanted to jump in there and defend him. And so we kept growing even after this friend was out of the picture. We kept getting to know each other. And I was just amazed at how sincere this person was and how he shared a lot of the same beliefs that I do, and it's funny because we love some of the same food, and some of the food that he likes I can't stand, and he teases me about it. We like to be affectionate with each other, but we've both made the promise that we're not going to have any sexual relationships before marriage. That's just what we believe. So it's hard, but I feel like this is the first relationship where I've been able to communicate and be open and honest. And, I think that's part of me growing and deciding that I'm worth having a good relationship. But we do have really open communication. When something bothers me, I tell him. When something bothers him, he lets me know. But really, we really get along really well. And he holds my hand, he hugs me when I need it, and I do the same for him. And we're a major support for each other. And he loves me in a way that nobody else has and nobody else could. Much like my family, they love me in a way that nobody else could. What's weird is, they say love only finds you when you're not looking for it. And I suppose that's true because I was looking for it all my life in the wrong places. And when he came along, it was through someone else. But we got together, and surprisingly, it happened when I learned to love myself.
How'd you learn that?
Well, honestly, first I went for some EMDR therapy.
Okay. I've done EMDR.
Yeah. God bless that therapy because I could not have gotten where I am today without it. But I learned that being able to take myself out of things, and see things from a different perspective, I learned that I'm a special person and that I deserve good things and that what I was told were lies. And learning for myself, who I really am, what I appreciate, what I can do, starting to question what I could and couldn't do was really the beginning because I realized I didn't know anything. What I thought about myself was a lie. So finding out who I was and learning what my faith was, I started to learn to love myself. And, even though I know through my medical stuff that, I love that footprints in the sand palm, and I know for an absolute fact that I was held and I was carried. And I just, when I couldn't do it on my own, there were a lot of people that carried me until I could walk on my own.
From who Michelle is now, back to who Michelle was on that suicide attempt, how has this Michelle changed?
Back at 13, I had no hope. And I thought, as I didn't see a way out of things, and I didn't have any coping skills. Now I have coping skills. Now I'm hopeful, and I have a love that will hopefully last my lifetime. And I love myself. And I can say that with absolute fact.
So, Michelle, we were, talking about the different aspects and things that have helped you to become the new Michelle, as opposed to that Michelle who had those suicide attempts and felt so lonely coming from this abusive relationship. Can you tell me about a project that you're working on that we're excited to have happen?
Yeah, I'm working on a book, and for the longest time I could not get the title. It wasn't sticking, and then I really thought about my life and what I'm about, and the title came and it stuck, and it's called something diagnosis, Beyond the Diagnoses, Living My Best Life. And I feel like that's what I do, There are several diagnoses that I have. Some of them false, some of them true. And the most recent one is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's an incurable disease. throughout my life. I've done some really great things I'm proud of, and I want to bring light to that. And even though I have these sad diagnoses, things, I want to let people know that they can still live a good life and live a happy life, even if they're not as productive as they want to be, or even if their life's not what they envisioned. It still can be very good and very happy and fulfilling.
And for the book, how far along are you into it? Like, is this something to expect soon? We still very much creating it?
I've got a lot of things, because what it's going to be is a lot of stuff that I've written already, a lot of poems, short stories that I've written, things like that. And what I want to do is kind of incorporate a little bit of my life and, what each poem meant, really, kind of the meaning behind it, and in that regard, share my life story.
Well, you and I share that common aspect of a love for stories and writing, myself being a filmmaker, and I've always taken great interest in your writing because I know that you write some amazing poems with incredible heart and deep emotion to them.
Yeah.
What is it about writing to you that keeps you doing it? Like, what is it about writing for you that's something that's empowering?
Well, I'm an empath, and so I can see things from many different perspectives. And sometimes even nothing to do with me, I will be able to feel that from somebody else. And writing is a great part of my recovery story, because I was able to write about things that I didn't necessarily have a voice to. And people have said this about me. I don't talk a lot, but I don't talk just to talk. When I say something profound and it helps somebody, that's what I'm looking forward to do in this book, really, is to be able to share my story and to give hope to others that are on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. I respect that ideology of not just talking to talk, because I think a lot of people do that. And I think it shows great patience and maturity on your side to have that reservation. We only have a few minutes left. So Michelle, tell me, what is one future goal you have for yourself on your recovery journey?
To use EMDR to recover from my PTSD and to continue to rethink the things I have negative thoughts about, and continue to heal my spirit and my self-esteem so that I can help people even more, and help myself.
EMDR, just for our listeners who might not know, can you explain a little bit about that if you know anything about EMDR?
I know that for me, they used buzzers, special vibrations that were quick when I was talking about the trauma. Those vibrations were very fast. And when they were bringing me back to my safe place and I was rethinking things the way I wanted to think about them, they would put slow vibrations. And so it's basically a way to put things in order in your brain so that your memories are not associated with the feelings you had. They're not intense. You may be able to recall a little bit about it, but they're not in the forefront of your mind. The feelings aren't in the forefront of your mind, and neither are the memories, really. There are times when you feel like it's yesterday, but I mean, you still don't experience the pain that you did. I wanted to share this just because this is me in a nutshell. This is my story, and this is what I'm passionate about. It's called My Voice. People are talking all around me. I stay silent. Does anyone see? I'm not important. I don't have a voice. Everyone else is making the choice. I'm right here, I cry, but nobody hears. I don't belong in this world, I fear. Bad guys come along, but they pay attention. They're showing me all this wanted affection. I'm too wrapped up to notice they're lying. In my heart, despair tells me I'm dying. Why am I never good enough? Authority figures say I'm not up to snuff. What's so wrong with attention, I want to know. TLC is better than the blows. I cry in silence. I'm told not to speak. No room for error. Perfection is what we seek. I have a great imagination, so I fantasize. I numb myself up so I don't hurt inside. Can this be fixed? This heart that's broke? Will I be the girl who never spoke? No, not anymore. I'm breaking free from these chains. It's time for the owners to take back their shame. I'm stepping out of the darkness and into the light. This soul of mine is going to shine so bright. I will use my examples and be the defender of those who want to give up and surrender. I will show them we don't have to be the pretenders.
Wow. That's fantastic. Now, because we can't see you, but Michelle, I can tell that poem has a lot of meaning behind it for you.
Yeah.
What did that feel like reading that out loud?
It's special to me because it's really my story. It's really how I feel. And, in there I talk about, no room for error. Perfection is what we seek. I'm told not to speak, and it's the truth. A lot of times I was like, we just didn't talk about this stuff. Everything was good. Everything was perfect. And it's not. And people need to know that there's someone out there like me. And I need to know that there are people out there like me, that we're not alone, that we've been through crap like this, and that we all can get through it. And that's why I said in there, I want to be the defender of those who want to give up and surrender and show them we don't have to be the pretenders. We don't have to be the ones that are silent all the time.
Listening to that poem for the end of our chat here and thinking about this story that you've told us, from the abused as a child to the loneliness and suicide attempts, but also finding that hope in that, coming to Ren and finding true love. It really is an amazing story. And I think it is encapsulated in that poem. And if I recall, earlier in this recording, you told us about how people would say positive and good things to you. And it was hard to hear that because you were never told that. You were told the opposite of positive and good things. That poem, for me, very much embodies that theme, that you are a positive and good person.
Thank you.
And you deserve to hear that, and so does everybody else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for this and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Is there any last-minute things you'd like to say before we close out?
To anybody listening, that people with mental illness, we are just people like everybody else, and no one needs to look down on us. Mental illness does not mean mentally stupid. We are just like everybody else. We have thoughts, feelings, and ideas, and we are very creative. And before anybody starts to smirk, just walk a mile in our shoes. And we are incredible people, just like anybody else. And we are equally loved.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your time, sharing and allowing us to share in your vulnerabilities and also your very private life. So I wish you all the best and take care.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.